Let's start by putting your pattern together. The first thing you need to do is always check the scale, make sure it's that 1 inch or 5 centimeters. And then the last page on your pattern pack shows you how to put the pattern together so that you can see how many pieces are involved. It's always in alphabetical order. You assemble your pattern along the dashed lines and then you get a complete pattern piece. Now I've cut everything out and we're just going to put some pieces together so you can see how it works. Some pieces don't even have any attachment lines. That's because they fit on a piece of paper. So you're taking piece A and B of the waistband here, for example, cover up the attachment line and then just sellotape it together. So it's really, really simple for you. There we are. And actually I do that with all my pattern pieces. And here I'm doing the placket, it's exactly the same. So now I've put everything together. Let's have a quick look at the pattern pieces. Here is my waistband and I've got a separate pattern piece for the interfacing, which doesn't include the seam allowance so that it doesn't get unnecessarily thick in the waistband. And then I've also got a marking there where we are going to attach the elastic from or going to insert the adjustable elastic, and there can be a buttonhole or just a stitching line. This is the pocket, which is simply sewn on to this protruding line here, and that makes the pocket insertion really, really simple. Now you need to cut the skirt once on the fold for the back and then twice for the front. Mirror image, of course, and then your placket will go onto the front piece like this. Now you'll notice that it's actually a little bit shorter, and that's because the hem is going to wrap around it. So it's a very nice, neat technique I want to show you here. You can also make the skirt with a hem trim. In that case, you need to cut off that little dotted line, and we're going to sew the hem trim to it, which is just folded in half lengthways, and that makes it very easy. You don't have to do any hemming then. And so we're just going to stick that on there. And then when you put the placket on, it will fit exactly into the space as well. And that's it for the pattern. Now we're ready to cut out our fabric. And I'm just folding it over so the selvages are on top of each other, and then I'm cutting my skirt out. If your pattern doesn't quite fit on, just make the skirt a little bit less wide. You just end up with less gathers. It really isn't a big deal. Now this can happen when your fabric is only 110 wide. You know, a lot of quilting fabrics are like that. Well, you just end up with a little bit less gather, that's all. Cut out your fabric with the pattern to your right and your scissor to your left if you can. You can do it the other way around as well, but it's much easier to cut out like this because you can manipulate the fabric with your left hand. And when you have a corner, it's easier to cut again from the lower edge here so that you get that sharp point instead of trying to go around it from the point. That is really hard to do. Now, if you are doing the single ones, then you just open up that fold. There we go. Fold your pattern back down, do the same again. So they're both the same really, and now I'm going to pin it back on and cut it out in exactly the same way so that I've got a back piece on the fold and 2 front pieces. Now your waistband you can cut with the selvage or across the fabric. That's absolutely fine. If you have, for example, a stripe, you might want to have the stripe running horizontally rather than vertically, which might look nice. And the same goes for the placket. It really depends on the pattern that you've got on there. You can cut it along the selvage or across the fabric. And if you're using a contrast, you know, you don't want to use maybe a lot of fabric, then cut it across the fabric. You want to cut out your pockets twice so that we've got 2 pairs. So I'm just going to cut another one of those. And then I'm cutting my interfacing, which is iron-on interfacing, so that I can iron that to my waistband in the area which will not have any elastic in it, so that it's nice and firm there. So that's ready. Now I also need to interface my placket, but only halfway, not the whole way. So you need to cut interfacing for that. Now let's have a look what happens when you want to do the hem trim. You simply cut the pattern along the dotted line. And now I'm just going to put that additional pattern piece on so that the next time I don't go looking for it and don't know where it is. Cut your hem trim. You can cut the hem trim in one long bit as well if you want to cut it along the selvage, if you have got enough fabric, and then you don't have to have a back on the fold and two fronts. Now the next thing we need to cut is the elastic, so you can go to your page in your instructions and look at elastic. I'm going to show you two versions, the one for the adjustable elastic and the one for the regular elastic. So that will be 1.25 inches or 3.18 or 3 centimeters for the wider regular elastic. It's really important that your elastic you're using for your adjustable waistband is slimmer than the one that you're using for the regular one. And I've now cut my interfacing and ironed that on. So let's have a look at what we've got here. We've got our placket all ready to go. We've got the elastic, our waistband, the pocket and the front, and you can see that on the front I've ironed on the interfacing already so that we're ready to go and it's nice and firm in this area. Now we're ready to sew Betsy together, so I see you in the next chapter.